to illuminate the often unseen mental health challenges faced by first responders, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and 911 dispatchers by sharing their stories, fostering understanding, and promoting resources for support and healing. We aim to break down stigma, advocate for improved mental health services within the first responder community, and inspire hope and resilience. This is the Weight We Carry podcast.
What's going on, guys? I'm Bart with the Weight We Carry podcast, and today we're super excited to have Mr. Cort Gordon. How are you, brother?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. Cort's a firefighter and a 911 dispatcher. Cort, can you give us a little bit more about yourself and your involvement in public safety?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Cort Gordon, for anybody that doesn't know me. Yeah, I was born in Washington, came into the Oakdale McDonald area, I'd say about fourth grade. My biological father is from there. I was kind of always around the public safety eye, I guess you could say. I come from a long history of, public safety people in my family. Like all my cousins, Matt Klein, he's our lieutenant in our fire department now. My other cousin, his brother, Chris Klein, Kenny Klein. So all the Kleins kind of involved in that in a very young age. It's funny because I remember like when I was like really, really little, I was probably like 6 years old, and we're at my cousin's house, Matt's house, and the whistle would blow off, and all the brothers would go running, and I was like, wow, like that's something that I want to do one day.
A big
So I was
whistle.
always around it. Yeah, big loud whistle. So, and it's funny because as you get older, you like realize things from when you were younger. And so he lived up on Hastings. Well, I think it's Hastings, yeah. And my wife now, she actually lived right across the street from them. So she was there the whole time. So it was weird. Like when we met, we were like, you lived right across from my
Been here
cousin
the whole
this whole
time.
time. Yeah, the whole time. And we never knew. So it was crazy. Yeah, I got more involved in public safety. I'd want to say like around when I was in sixth grade. I started going around, hanging out at the firehouse that I wanted to join at the time. And then obviously like sixth grade, you're really young, so you can't do anything. So, I just hang out at the station, watch them train, just get a feel for the environment. I think it was eighth or ninth grade, where they started Parkway. I can't remember which year it was, but I started Parkway. I was there, I want to say, for a year, and unfortunately we had to move, so I had to go into a different school district. I did some time in Crafton School District for a little bit because that was the shelter we were staying at the time. But yeah, I've loved it. I mean, obviously there's been some ups and downs for sure, but I think the most important part of it all is, finding a department that you really truly feel like you belong in.
Sure.
So yeah, it's been great. I've been with Oakdale for, I think I'm going on 3 or 4 years. So I'm still very new, very freshly new in the whole, public safety. I over last summer, I got my mods 1 through 3 for the fire department. Unfortunately, I had to stop and take a break because I had some health concerns that I had to take care of, and I put off for a really long time. I have really low blood sugar. I don't think anybody wants me inside of a burning building.
No,
If my sugar's going down, no. So can't help anybody else unless you help yourself first.
Right.
So I finally decided to put myself first, and I hope to. I have big plans to go back and finish and get my interior and finish with my burn class. So that's
Heck yeah.
really exciting. But yeah, that's pretty much how I got involved in it.
I'm really glad you reached out to come on, Cort, because one, like you said, you're not new, but you're fairly new to public safety, but you're young. You're
Yeah,
young.
I am.
You're young.
I'm only 20 years old.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So I really think you can allow our listeners and our watchers, afford them a really good perspective, because you're seeing most of us that are coming on, we're in our mid 30s, 40s,
Right.
even 50s and even older.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's going to be a nice, fresh perspective of a new provider or a new public
Absolutely.
safety person. And you did touch, I heard you say, bouncing around schools and a shelter. So let's get into your childhood a little bit.
Yeah.
I think you have a really unique story. You and I spoke previously when we were at work, and it has me really interested. Everyone has a story, and I want everyone to know what you've been through and what you've seen.
Yeah, and it's so weird. I was talking to my wife about it because you and I, like, I feel like as soon as we met and we started talking, like it was like an automatic click, and you don't find that with a lot of people. And I was talking to my wife, and I'm like, like this podcast has like gotten like a really big following all of a sudden. I I don't know, like, if my story is, really worth sharing. And it's like,
Sure, it
she's
is.
like, everybody has a story because, I've gone through some pretty crazy stuff at a young age. I think it was sixth grade. We went into a homeless shelter for the first time. My mom was a single mom. Love her. I love her to death. She was the best. She really was, given the circumstances. Single mom, wasn't really in contact with my biological father at the time. I have a sister. She's 3 years younger than me, and she's on the spectrum. So, growing up, I think that's a lot of where the mental health journey plays a role into it because, not that it was necessarily anybody's fault, my mom's fault, my sister's fault, nobody's fault, but, having a sibling or anybody in your life that requires some extra assistance, you're kind of like, I don't want to say left in the dark, but I was always more independent. So I
Mhm.
didn't need that extra, assistance or somebody that was by my side all the time. So, yeah, my mom was a single mom. She took care of the both of us, provided for the both of us the best that she could. Fortunately, and I say this because, you and I have talked before, and I said this to you. I feel that everybody in their life at one point should experience what I went through, if not something similar, because it really gives you a whole new perspective on life.
Yeah,
It really
absolutely.
does. So sixth grade, we left. Fourth grade, we left. We were living with my grandparents in Langloth in Burgestown. So it was in Washington County. That's where my mom, born and raised, my grandparents lived, born and raised. We ended up moving out into an apartment. The apartment did not work. I forget exactly for what reason it didn't work. We were really in a tough spot, and so we ended up in this family shelter. It was called Family Promise. Such a good organization, and unfortunately, I think since COVID, they've been shut down.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we ended up in this homeless shelter. It was called Family Promise. It was really solely focused on, you know picking families back up and setting them up with housing and helping the parent get back on their feet. So it was located in Crafton. We would spend um, the day at the day center, which was the house. So we would spend the day there. My sister and I would go to school. We would take 2 to 3 buses to school. So I'm like, I don't remember how old I was being in sixth grade. I'm taking a couple buses to school, and my mom would stay at the day center and try to figure out things for us. And we would come back, and every week we stayed at a different church. So it was all, the proceeds and everything came from churches that would put this organization together. So we would stay at churches all over, and sometimes it would be a half hour away. Sometimes we were traveling an hour away. So
Wow.
every day after school, come home. We had, I think there were 6 rooms. It was literally just like a house, like you live in. They were just split into rooms. They had little curtains, and we had people from all over. We had people from New York, Kansas City, everywhere that you could think of that would come here, and they would put them in this organization, and they would help them get back on their feet. So we would stay there until probably about like 6 o'clock, and we'd take a little shuttle bus to the church that we were staying at. The one particular church that I loved, it was just I was always so happy when we went there because it had this huge gym, and it had like a movie theater and all, like, a space for the kids to play, and because there were other kids there too. So
Yeah.
we had like 4 or 5 families, young kids, older kids. It was the church in Bridgeville. It's called Bethany. It's right across from the Rite Aid.
Yeah.
Great, fantastic people. The pastor there was fantastic. And being in that situation, I think I liked it because, as fortunate as we were to be in churches, to have a roof over our head, some people weren't so friendly with us. And, I think I liked Bethany so much because the people there treated us like we were just normal people.
Yeah.
Like they didn't treat us like, oh, these people are homeless and don't have anything, and we have to, provide them food and whatnot. So it was really, I really loved Bethany because they were great people. They took care of us, anything that we need. And the pastor actually took us out for the first time to Dairy Queen, and it was just it was a great time. So we were there for probably about a year before we got our own place. And yeah, we started there. I've never really had a perfect. I don't think anybody does, but I didn't really have a great relationship with my mom growing up, and it was hard. And like I said, that I think plays a big role into some of the mental health problems that I had previously into before getting into emergency services.
Sure.
So yeah, I was very young. I started, I moved schools, I'm starting a new school in West Allegheny, and had no idea who anybody was. And here we come, me and my sister we're coming straight from a homeless shelter. We're trying to navigate, going to school. And, my mom's trying to navigate, having our own place at first. So, there's a lot of, conflict between her and I, like I said,
Sure.
at a young age, not necessarily having a father figure because my mom was my mom and dad, so my father, we didn't really see eye to eye. They didn't see eye to eye. So not having a father figure and, not having so much, say, a mother figure either, because not that she meant it, but all of her time was strictly devoted into my sister because my sister had to have family-based services come in. She didn't know how to eat on her own. She'd have outbursts that needed to be handled. So, it was very difficult for me because going to West Allegheny, there's a lot of like people that come from money that live a
Sure.
different lifestyle than I did. Coming into this, we came into the apartment with the same clothes that we had on our back. We had to start completely over. So all these kids, are wearing all these like fancy stuff, getting new things, and I'm over here like, all right, so where do I fit in? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that was a big part of that. Yeah, but we were in that apartment, I'd say, for I think it was 4 years the first time, and fortunately, like I said, we ended up back in the shelter again, and this time I think it was in eighth grade when that happened, like the end of seventh grade, eighth grade. And this time it was completely different. And like as time goes on, like people change, the dynamic of everyone's environment changes. So we were there again for a year, completely different people. The last people that we were in with, we were all like one big family. These people came from all over, and it was like a different upbringing. It
Yeah.
was like everybody for themselves. Like I had mentioned to you when we spoke not too long ago. I was a little bit older. I think maybe I was like 12 or 13, somewhere around there. So my sister's three
Mhm.
years younger than me. And we were staying in a church in Mount Lebanon, and we had this new family that came in. And, I've always been the type, being in the shelter and, being kind of isolated as young as I was always the type of person to like look at, like just get a feel for people. And
Sure.
you can tell when those people are, sort of off, something isn't right. So, one night we're at this church in Mount Lebanon, and we have this new family that came in, and I just kept saying to my mom, like, something is off. Something is off. These people, like, they're just looking at us weird. The one guy that was staying there was just moving weird. It was just very weird. And he had a little girl, and I believe it was his wife or his girlfriend, and they were just like isolated, wouldn't come out of their rooms. We would play bingo, we'd do arts and crafts. I learned how to crochet. Like we used to do all kinds of stuff. And these people just did not want anything to do with it. And my
Right.
mom's like, well, maybe they're just closed off people. And I'm like, Mom, there's something wrong here. And as the night went on, it was just very weird, especially with the older women, just very weird, acted very strange. And my sister's younger, so she doesn't know what's going on. And I feel like I'm going crazy because I'm like, this dude is making me feel some type of way, and you're saying so she later on that night, she started noticing that something was wrong, and so did the other families. So just picture like I'm 13, 12, 13 years old. My sister's like 9 or 10, and it's just me, my sister, and my mom. And with these other families, we're sleeping out in the day room on the couch with knives under the couch cushions because my mom was scared,
Yeah.
and I'm little. There's nothing that I can do. This is a big dude. what am I going to do? So that's why I said I feel like everybody should experience something like that at least once in their life, because there's a lot of, I'll say, kids, because I'm only 20 years old. I'll be 21 in May, but there's a lot of people that are my age that take so many things for granted,
Oh
and
yeah.
and, and just worry about the stupidest stuff. And it's like the materialistic stuff. When you're in that situation, there's nothing materialistic. You have nothing materialistic that matters. Nothing. You have yourself, family that you're with, and the people that are putting a roof over your head. And that's what you have to be thankful for. It's crazy because, still to this day, like, besides like the people, like the guys at the firehouse, I struggle to make friends. I do, because nobody seems to be on the same wavelength as me at
Yeah.
the age that I am.
You're more mature than a lot of adults I know.
Yeah, yeah. So I swear, like my wife and I, our best friends, I kid you not, Bart, our best friends are the senior citizens that live next to us, and they're in their 70s and 80s. My wife goes over there, she has coffee with the neighbor, we let the dog out, like we go out to dinner. Those are our best friends because
There's
we
nothing
don't
wrong
do
with that.
anything.
There's
We don't
nothing
do
wrong
anything.
with that.
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, like a very very young age, and I can sit here and tell you about the experiences that I've went through being in that situation, but nobody would really understand and get a feel for the situation unless you were in it yourself.
Sure, sure.
And
I can't even
that's
imagine. I can't imagine, living out of a shelter. I'm fortunate enough I never had to experience that.
Yeah, and that was a big thing. That was a big thing that kind of opened my eyes for emergency services as far as the medical side, because I mean that was years good while back ago, and the opioid crisis that we're in wasn't
Mm,
as bad back then, but it was just starting to rocket off, and we had people that were living with us that would be with us one night, overdosing the next. And as young as I was, I'm like, there has to be something that somebody can do. Like, I want to be able to help people like this, especially in that sort of situation. Because we had people that came in that were just down. I mean, our family we weren't really embarrassed to, everybody at some point goes through a time in their life that struggles. I mean,
sure.
maybe more than others, but it wasn't embarrassing for us. I mean, people came in and they were just completely isolated, did not even want to admit the fact that they were in a homeless shelter. You know what I mean? And it was like, there's nothing wrong with it. Everybody goes through it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If I truly believe, or if I did not go through the situation that I did, and my mom did not get us the help that we needed, and let's just talk about that, because that realizing my mom has always suffered from depression and anxiety and ADD, ADHD. For someone like this, not even just in emergency services, just as a whole, there's a mental health crisis. And for my mom with two kids, two very small kids, to go to somebody and be like, "Look, I need help. I can't do this on my own," is huge. As
Absolutely.
much as my mom and I didn't see eye to eye when I was younger, that's huge, because it's far more just about yourself when you have two kids. So thank God I don't tell her enough how proud I am and how big that is of her to take that leap and be like, "Look, I can't do this on my own. I need help."
Yeah.
So
Reaching out,
that's
that's a
huge.
huge step. Huge
It
step.
is huge, huge. But yeah, that's a little bit how my childhood went. When I got into high school, the last time we were in the homeless shelter, I think my mom was kind of like, "I can't keep doing this. I don't want to keep putting my kids in this situation." I felt like she was embarrassed that we were here again. So after the last time we were there, we went back. We got an apartment. We stuck there all the way until like a couple years ago, when my mom finally actually bought a house. So she lives in a house now. So yeah, that was kind of a little bit of my upbringing. And it was hard because I was in middle school when it happened. I was in sixth grade. I was just transferring over to eighth grade. I talked to you. I lost one of my really really good friends,
Mm,
and I think, not looking back on it, I don't think I realized what I was actually going through until years and years later,
sure.
because you don't think about those sort of things. But I'm trying to juggle going to school, catching three buses to go to school, what shelter we're going to be at, if my mom and my sister are going to be safe, and then I get hit with this huge loss.
Yeah.
And it was like, how do you deal with all that? You know what I mean? So
And you told me the background of that story with your friend, and I don't know if you want to share that, and that's fine. But I,
yeah,
at such a young age, you can't even really begin to understand what happened
no,
there.
no.
And
So
on top of the other stuff, like how you were growing up, that's what a man, dude.
yeah,
I'm not laughing. Jeez,
no, no. If you
jeez.
don't, honestly, there are times where, like, I talk to my wife about certain situation, and it's like, if you don't laugh about it, you're not going to get
Yeah,
anything from a situation.
yeah,
You have to look at it. You got to get. There's a lot of positive things that I got out of it for me not to laugh and be like, I can't believe I went through that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But yeah, I was, and this is like when we first talked about some of the stuff that we were going to talk about and how mental health has impacted my life and emergency services. I actually this was a huge thing for me that I didn't realize back when it was happening. I almost didn't pursue a career in emergency services because of this. Yeah, it was sixth grade. I believe it was sixth grade. One of my best friends, his name was Evan Zimniak. I'm sure like other people. His mom has actually wrote a book now. She's
Mm,
an author, but we were in sixth grade. I remember the day so clearly. There was a group of kids that didn't necessarily fit in the cafeteria. So there was this very, very nice math teacher. His name was Mr. Davis. He's unfortunately not here with us anymore. He suffered I believe it was a stroke or a heart attack out of nowhere. So he would open his classroom up to us for lunch for the kids that didn't necessarily fit in or were bullied or whatever. And we all had this little group that we had lunch with him upstairs during lunch. And I remember the day so vividly. Evan was such an old soul. Like he loved like old gaming systems, old coins, like anything from like back in the 90s or what. He was all over it. He loved it.
yeah,
So I had just started. My pap had collected the old quarter books. He would get the quarter books, and they'd be D quarters
sure.
and
Yep,
from
yep,
different
yep.
states. Yep.
Yeah,
So my pap had just given me my collection that he had been collecting for years for me and my sister. So we bonded over coins. And I don't remember, what I was so young, so young. I mean, like I couldn't even comprehend the smallest things, let alone this big, huge thing that I had no idea was about to happen. So him and I got into an argument over something so stupid. I forget what it was, and I ended up calling him an idiot, and that was the last time I ever spoke to him. I was in my we were on our way to the gas station, and in school today, social media is a huge thing. It can be good and it can be bad. There are some positive and negative things about it, and I've seen all over social media, R.I.P. Evan, like gone too soon, and I'm like, what is everybody talking about? So the next day, we had a meeting. It was a big grade level meeting. Our principal sat us down, and he was like, "Unfortunately, we have lost one of our students." And they brought in all these grief counselors for everybody, and I was like, "I don't need to talk to anybody of these. I don't even know who these people are. I don't need to talk to anybody." And he told us that he passed away from a suicide, and they asked us if anybody had any questions and whatnot, and nobody said anything. It was unreal, and it's like one of those things that you go through in life. Again, it's like
yeah.
how do you even deal with that at such a young age? And I had three classes with him. My first class of the day was with him. I sat right behind him, so I just remember walking into that classroom, and I couldn't do it. I could not do it. Everybody was crying, and it was just so silent. Excuse me. Even the teachers, like the teachers could not do it. It was horrible. I didn't know how to I didn't know how to wrap my head around it.
A young
But
brain isn't meant to process something of
right,
that
right.
of that.
Being so young, somebody here one day and gone the next, and not knowing why. Years later, that's all the school told us, was that he passed away from a suicide. There was help if he needed it. That's all that the school told us. So years later, I was like, something just doesn't like sit right with me. I just can't get any peace with this. I can't understand. I carried this huge burden with me for so many years. I think it wasn't until like my eighth grade into freshman year, I was like, I'd asked my counselors if they could get me his mother's contact information because we were best friends in school. We never talked outside of school. So and they were like, "Oh, well, she just doesn't like basically I was told that, she needs time to heal." And which is understandable. Like, you're
Sure.
losing your child. I completely understand it. So I respected it. So I never reached out to her in any of those years. And I carried this huge burden on me, and I beat myself up over it for so many years because we got into this stupid little argument. And what if I said something to him that he took the wrong way? Or if he
Yeah.
needed help, why didn't he just reach out? You know what I mean? So I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. This doesn't make sense to me. I found her contact information on Facebook, I believe it was my freshman year of high school, and I reached out to her. And I sent this long paragraph to her explaining everything and how sorry I was. And she was like, she responded back to me instantly. And she was like, I never told the school that I didn't want to talk to anybody. They isolated me from everybody.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's crazy because all these years I've been trying to reach out to you to talk to you because I wanted to let you know that I did something wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if I do something wrong, if I do something to upset somebody, sometimes I don't even realize it. It's just like my personality. Like
That's
sometimes,
being a human though. That's
right,
being
right,
human, man.
right. So I reached out to her and we spoke, and they actually, you know, nobody will ever know what happened. You can't jump into somebody else's brain, what they were going through. Yeah, Evan was on the spectrum as well too, like my sister. He had a lot of behavioral problems and other things that he was struggling with. So nobody will really know exactly what happened, but his death certificate just got changed a couple years back to accidental. It seems to be a lot of like, not to offend anybody, but a lot of the older people seem to know about it more so than I did. I never even heard about it until, Evans Dana educated me about it. There was a choking challenge going around, and the way that he was found, and it's crazy because, like I told you, I found out that somebody that I went to class with for the county, somebody I went to class with, was one of the first responders on scene, and I had no idea. So
Yeah.
we talked about it, and we're really good friends now. And I said to him, we were talking about it, and there's some things that you got to be careful with what you talk about because of the HIPAA and stuff.
Sure.
But it just didn't make sense to me the way that he was found. Evan was such a very messy person. Like, he could be a very messy person, but he was very like OCD about things. Like, everything had to be lined up a certain way, and it just didn't make sense the way that he was found to me. And still today, I don't know. Nobody will ever know what really happened,
Huh.
and it's something that's very unfortunate. But yeah, it never made sense to me. But for me personally, that was a huge step in my mental health to be able to talk to her and, let out and express some things that I had been carrying for years.
Sure.
Because in all reality, Dana was like, I never even knew that you had an argument. So I'm all these years, I'm thinking, wow, I really messed up and did something terrible. And it wasn't. I didn't do anything wrong. We were young. We were young.
Yeah.
Nobody,
Your kids, man.
you know? So yeah, she a couple years ago she wrote a book about Evan and the things that he went through. Just to for some parents to relate to some kids that have developmental issues and stuff like that. It's a really good book. And yeah, her and I still talk to her to this day. We still go over. There's a memorial at the school, at the elementary school that he went to, Donaldson Park. There's a tree planted in his name with a bench. I actually took my senior pictures on that bench. So yeah, I'm very much still involved with her. Very
Good.
remarkable woman. Remarkable woman.
I'm
But
glad you could
yeah,
find some sort of closure speaking to her.
yeah.
You can't fathom, a young mind like that having to deal with such a tragic loss.
Yeah,
I heard that story when I was going through class also.
yeah.
And to hear that, you hear that the call come through. It's, as dispatchers you hear stuff like that, but particularly when it's a friend of
Oh
yours,
yeah.
that's
Oh yeah. It really hit close to home. And like I said, I was so young, and I feel like, even more so now working in emergency services, I feel for her even more, and it hits even close to home now because of, calls that I've had, like my my first time working an overtime shift, and I get a hanging on my first call. You know what I mean? And then it like brings everything back. So it's like it's a never ending process in emergency services, because now with hearing that call that, we all heard, and now getting this hanging and being so worked up and so nervous, like reading the right protocol, making sure you get it out quick, making sure if there's help that can be needed, it gets help quickly, because it's detrimental with cardiac arrest, any sort of cardiac arrest. But hearing that, as being 20 years old now, hearing that call, and it's devastating. It is so devastating. I don't care how old you are, what profession you're in, hearing something like that, a mother just, you know, and I don't have kids, and you have a son. Hearing that, being in that situation, your kid is gone, and there is nothing you can do.
Yep.
Absolutely nothing you can do.
Yeah, we all, especially as when I still worked in EMS, kid calls, they're always bad, no matter what.
Yeah, it
If
is.
it's a child, or a real elderly person,
Hmm.
those are the ones that really bother you, specifically kids. And I've had several, in the years that I worked, and then some of them ended up in court, and it's crazy stuff that you have to deal with.
Yeah,
But I remember, on the come down after like pediatric calls, and it was when my son was still relatively young, maybe two. He was maybe 2 years old in the one call that I'm speaking about in particular. But we transferred care in the hospital. We all, come out, make your stretcher up, sort of have a quick gathering in the hallway of the hospital that we were at. My, at the time, director and I had two partners with me, and we all just sort of lost our shit, just because we all like had young kids, and director's like, "You good?" And I'm like, "No." He's like,
not at all,
"You
actually.
guys are out of service for a little bit, make some phone calls if you need to." And that's, I called home, spoke to my wife, and I wanted to see my little boy on FaceTime at the time, So there's calls that still, to this day, they triggered me, you know.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
and there's ones that you still carry, but I think, we all have different calls or instances that affect us,
absolutely.
but I don't want to be here. When we were talking, my wife and I talking to Holly, it's not but I did this too. And I'm not trying to do that. That's
Yeah,
just
no,
my experience, because everyone's
yeah,
experience is different and everyone's way of handling things is different. But
yeah, and I
there's
think,
definitely something that
yeah,
that's good to talk. We need to talk.
yeah. I think that's what all, not saying, oh, I've been through this too, or I've done that too, but I think it's all something that, we relate on, that brings us all together,
Yeah.
like what we're doing now. Like, you've been through some stuff being so young and freshly new into emergency services. I've been through some similar things, and thank God for the people that have been in it for years, because people like me that are freshly starting, that are getting these hanging calls, or running cardiac arrest calls, or doing CPR for a half hour on somebody on the phone and in person, two different worlds, right? And I'm like, why am I feeling like this? Or I can't shake this call. And people that have been in it for years, you're like, listen, it's totally normal. It's totally normal. If we didn't have that, we'd have a bigger problem.
And I
You know what
think
I mean?
that conversation is now, I believe it started to open up,
Yes.
we're
Yeah.
seeing that, and people like just suck it up buttercup. And we said it through every one of these interviews that we've had, that old way of thinking needs to be pushed right out the window. It's okay to talk about it. And I think
Absolutely.
that's because you have that critical incident, whether it could be, nothing even that crazy in the grand scheme of things, but it affects everyone different.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you can, once that call, take a second and start you have to process it. You have to be able to figure out what in that call. If it's the call in particular, probably not. When we were speaking to Holly yesterday, she's part of a new thing at New Orleans EMS. Her and three of her partners, they're trying to do a CISM type thing, but it's only a few certain questions. And it's not like us getting in the room and us comparing stories. That's not what we want. That's not going to be constructive.
Right.
What in that particular call bother you? There's some sort of instant trigger. It's not the whole call as a whole. It's a trigger that that is affecting us. So that's what
Yeah.
we need to be able to sit down and be like, try to figure that out. And
Identify.
then identify it, and then work our way through it. And I really think that's what we all need to try to do as, whether we're mentors or, the new people coming in. The new people coming in, you guys, you're getting into it because you've seen things and you see a reason to get into 911 or emergency services of any sort, and because you look up to someone. This is a message to all you old heads out there.
Yeah.
With the new people up and coming, foster these new people and give them all your
Yeah.
knowledge and your experience to better prepare people like
Yeah.
Cort coming in.
Yeah. I have, on the topic of, mentoring and everything, I honestly feel like I was at a very low place for a long time, and, joining the Oakdale Fire Department was one of the best decisions of my entire life, if not saved my life, seriously.
Oh yeah,
Like my cousin, I don't think he, because I'm not one that like normally like, shares on that or whatever, but I don't think he like really understands how much that he did, and the guys in the firehouse really did save my life. So I could not be more blessed to have such a good structural foundation there.
I can see that pride in your pictures that you sent me, man,
Yes,
of your
yeah,
wedding, dude. That's awesome. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
It's amazing. You
yeah,
got a good group of people down there. You got
yeah.
you got Snatch. Heck
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. He is you have no idea. Like I'm sure you know him very well, but like his whole family, it's not just him, like his mom, his dad, like, his wife Molly, like they are all, even his daughter, they are such good people. Very good people. I don't know how anybody could have anything bad to say about them ever. They are the first person to step in if you need just the smallest thing. Like it's crazy the amount of like love they have for people, and they just
Yeah.
do, and expect nothing in return. They just do over and over and over again, and it's
That's good
crazy.
people, man.
Yeah,
Good people.
he's a really good guy.
So you mentioned a little bit about therapy.
Yeah.
How did it play a role to you in helping you work through any of the challenges that you came up with over your young time here?
Yeah, yeah. I started therapy at a very young age. I started therapy in fourth grade. My mom noticed rather quickly that something was not, I guess you could say, right. I had a very hard time making friends in the beginning. I had a very hard time communicating my feelings, how I felt, if something was bothering me. So she was like, "You need to go see a therapist." So that's what I did. I went through multiple different therapists until I finally found the one that I really liked. I mean, I as a young kid going through all that stuff that I did pre-emergency services, and I'm sitting down with, I forget who it was that the gentleman that you had on here, that he said he went to see some therapists and they just couldn't handle it.
Jeff
And they
Kelly.
looked at him, yeah. And I was
Yeah.
like, that is so crazy because I have never met somebody that has gone through something similar that I have at such a young age. The stories and the situations that I've been in, whether it had been in the homeless shelter or whatever I went through, some of these therapists would look at me like I'm crazy. Like I'm 10 years old, 10 years old, sitting here telling you everything that, that's on my mind. And
Yeah.
you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Those therapists, you're like, why should you be a therapist?
Right. Where did you get your license from? I would love to know. I would love to know. Right. Because then it like made me feel like, okay, maybe there is, I'm like looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, okay, maybe there is something wrong with you because people don't understand you. But I finally met the therapist that like I haven't seen her in a while, just because life gets to you, and you you got to put that first, and I'm working on it, but I haven't seen her in a while. I found a really good therapist in fourth grade, so she has been with me through it all, and I think that is very important. Whether you're just now realizing you need help, or you've been seeing a therapist for years, finding that person that you feel comfortable with is the most important thing. Because if you
Yeah.
don't feel
You can't open
comfortable
up.
with somebody,
Can't open
you're
up.
not going to want to talk to them. There's nothing to talk about. You know what I mean? I've seen the same therapist since I was in fourth grade. Her name is Mrs. Beth. I saw her in school. She was through Family Links. She would come in school and see me. I'd see her outside of school. I saw her, I think, once or twice a week, and just talking. problems that were going on with maybe my relationship with my mom, my dad, school, relationships. God, like I said, my wife and I had a small wedding, but we're gonna have a reception, and we say all the time, like our school therapists and our individual therapists, boy, do they have stories to tell. They have stories to tell because we've been together since her freshman year of high school.
Wow.
So it's like almost 7 years.
Heck yeah,
So
man.
we were babies,
Good for
the
you. Good for
drama,
you.
everything. But yeah, I started therapy at a very young age, and I continued it because therapy, some people, I feel like not so much the older people anymore or the people that have been in emergency services for years or whatever. But I feel like a lot of the newer people that come in and that are young, like me, and like you said before, like think they're invincible and
Mm,
it's never going to catch up to you. And you can just go on back to back cardiac arrest, someone overdoses, just keep going. You just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And eventually, it doesn't matter how old you are, it's going to catch up to you. It is.
yep.
You're going to
It's
get
gonna
that one call.
rear
You're
its
going to
ugly
get that
head.
one call. You're going to get that one call. It's whether it's going to be a pediatric patient or, an older patient, whatever it is, it's going to catch up to you and everything is going to follow it behind. So, it's very important that if you think just a little bit that, maybe this is something that I should talk to somebody about because it's bothering me just the tiniest bit. It doesn't matter how old you are. Like reach out and get help. Seriously, because we've lost way too many people that have just thought, this isn't worth it. Nobody's going to want to listen to this. This isn't a big deal until it is, and you can't do anything about it. So yeah, I've always been in therapy for a long time since a young age. And it's a good thing. It's not something to
Yeah,
be embarrassed about.
not at all.
Yeah,
Like just speaking to you, man, much more mentally mature than some
yeah,
adults that I know.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's
I
the
get that
thing.
a lot.
You understand life,
Yeah,
yeah, with your experiences, and that's I found it. Like I said, when you reached out and then you were surprised that I reached back out to you and
yeah,
acknowledged it, I was like, no, man, like hell yeah, what a unique perspective.
yeah,
You've seen some shit, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And people just write you off. They'll write you off just because of your age, and
yeah.
that's definitely not a fair shake, you know.
Listen, I
Um,
get it. I get it. I get it. There's people that have been in this career for years and they're like, you're just coming in, and I get it. But, you know, I think it's like I said, I've been fortunate enough that, as far as our department is very aggressive when it comes to training, remediation, whatever it is,
mhm.
we are very aggressive. And I have been super fortunate to have that in my life because I'm young. Can you imagine if I didn't have that? And I'm running these fatal calls or dealing with something at work and I have nobody to talk to. Like some of these people think that they have nobody to talk to. We
Yeah.
like as unfortunate and crazy as it is to think, we are the future generation. That's what we are.
That's why I said foster the new people, man, because they're going to be
We're
taking care of
yeah,
us
yeah,
down the
absolutely.
line.
Absolutely. And that's the best part. Just like I said, people may write me off because I'm young or whatever the case may be, but
Yeah.
we're the future generation. And if we don't have good leadership and, experiences and role models to look up to carry it on,
Yep.
there's not going to be a future generation for anything, you know?
Scary. That's
It
scary,
is.
man.
It's a scary thought.
So mentioned your wife, which is
Yes.
fantastic, man. She's
Yes.
been a huge, huge support system for you.
Huge.
How she helped you through the tough times.
She is like, you and I have talked about, with your wife and
Yeah.
I don't know how she puts up with me sometimes, but I don't know what I would do without her. I mean, so a little bit about her. She's in the Rad Tech program for CCBC. So she is, starting into not necessarily the same point of view, same career in emergency services, but she wants to be a radiology technician and she wants to do MRIs. So, still in emergency services, but right now she has no background in emergency services whatsoever. None. I could not be more blessed. I think when I joined and, we made the decision that, we're in it for the long run. Because if you really look at it, there's not very many people, and we got a lot of hate for getting married at such a young age. Her parents don't speak to her. I mean, she
Hmm.
speaks to her dad a little bit. She's going through a really rough time right now with her mom. My mom, whatever makes me happy. My dad, same thing. But there's not a lot of people that stick together and make it outside of high school because,
There's not older people in their 30s
all
that
right,
make it. I
all
mean,
right.
it's crazy.
There's
You
not
see
even
the divorce rate's
friendships.
crazy.
There's
Yeah.
not even
Oh yeah.
friendships that make it outside of high school, let alone relationships. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
we got married in January. I believe it was January 19th.
You better
But
remember that.
yes, yeah, I know, because she will get me. Yeah, we got married in the firehouse with, just very immediate family. My mom, my dad, which was, let me tell you, that was huge. That was huge. I had a lot of worries about that. My parents have been divorced since 2005. They do not get along with each other. They don't speak to each other. They can't even, hey, how you doing? Nope, none of that.
Yeah.
So for them to meet, that was a huge thing for me. I was like, oh my boy, how the hell are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? Because my dad's remarried now. I mean, best thing that happened for him. Best thing. She is great. I call her my mom. She's my second mom. Best thing that could happen. So, we got married, and it was the craziest thing. I'm sitting here, I'm like wiping my eyes. I'm like, what's going on here? Like they're existing. It was crazy. They came together for a good cause. Yeah, she I felt so terrible because my wife didn't have any of her family there. And it was like, that's what we're talking about here. Just
Yeah.
because you're young, people will just shut you out, and you can't let that get to you, because we have a great relationship. Our dynamic in our relationship compared to when we were in high school is a completely different thing. As soon as she knew, like when I was in high school, she knew that I was involved in emergency services. I was doing ride-alongs with Northwest EMS. I was in the fire department, very, very freshly new in the fire department. I was going to school. I was going to night school to get my EMT, and that's like hours within itself just to get through the class. She has been the biggest support system I've had. Seriously, anything. I mean, like, she doesn't, and that's why I feel like it's good to talk to somebody that goes through the same thing that you do, because she's always there. She's always there. There's never a moment that she's not there. If something's bothering me, she knows something's bothering me before I know something's
Calls you
bothering
out
me.
on it.
All the time. Like, she's like, "What is wrong? Why are you acting like that?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "I know something's wrong, and we'll talk about it." Our communication is so on point, and I think that's one of
That's
the biggest
that's
reasons.
99% of your relationship of
Right.
a
But that
marriage is
that yeah.
communication, man.
Yeah, that's why we've stuck together for so long, because we've both gone to therapy. We've both worked on communication. That's what it is. Communication, but also understanding and comprehensive, because
Comprehending. Yeah.
if you can communicate with somebody until you're blue in the face, but if they're not understanding what you're saying, you're never going to get anywhere, you
That's
know?
right.
So
Absolutely.
we both gone to therapy and worked on communication skills, how to healthily cope with things. Yeah, she's been huge. I could not ask for a better support system. Anything that I need, anything that's bothering me, she understands. Like, it's crazy because, I feel like, especially in the fire side of it, I feel like it has become, and I've just talked to Jimmy's mom about this the other night. I feel like it's become normalized where the wife or the girlfriend or whatever hates what you do, hates that you're leaving at 3 o'clock in the morning to go run a call, or hates that you're always down the firehouse. And me and my wife just don't understand it, because as soon as she realized and found out that she could be voted in as an associate member, she hit the ground running. She loves it.
Awesome.
She is
Awesome.
all up in that. She lives for that shit. Like the carnival, she can't wait. She cannot wait. She loves getting involved. I mean, she doesn't run calls or anything like that, but she loves helping out,
But
like
she's part of the
purse
fire
bingos.
department.
Yeah, purse bingos. Loves her birthday actually falls on one of our carnival days, and she loves it. There's no place she'd rather be. I'm like, "Are you sure? Like, if you don't want to, we can go out to eat." She's like, "No, like, I want to be down at the carnival." I'm like, "Okay." And
That's
it's
awesome.
crazy. It's crazy because, like I said, I feel like it's become normalized that, you know, your partner or whoever you're with is supposed to hate what you're doing. Because I know a lot of people that, it kind of causes a barrier in their relationship
Oh
for
yeah.
being out so much, or being out down at the firehouse so much, and it's crazy because, I get it. I get it, because as much as she's involved, just as much as I am, right? There's always that time where you need to separate yourself from it. If I'm going to work, working the career that we work, and then coming home and I volunteer my time to do the same thing, but on the opposite end of the phone.
Yeah.
It's not a healthy thing.
And we've discussed that extensively with some other guests is
Mhm.
where's that separation? Because, I've seen so many marriages and relationships get torn away
Yeah,
because
tarnish.
you work, if you're working at the EMS station as a like a paid person, that's your
Mhm.
career. And then right after you get off your 24, you go and sleep at the firehouse. And you know what I mean? Where's that time
Yeah,
to decompress? You have to say, I get it. Like, it's okay to eat, sleep, breathe emergency services, but
to a point.
is it okay to make that your identity? And on the flip of that is you need to decompress from it. You can't be surrounded by it 24/7.
No,
That's not healthy. You have
no.
to take a break from everything. Nothing to that extent is healthy.
Yeah,
So,
it's
that
it's like
separation.
it's like you may have said something similar on the show with somebody else, but it's like if your whole life you eat the same thing every day, all day, you're not gonna want to keep doing it
Yeah.
because it's gonna get old after a time. You
Oh
know what I
yeah.
mean? There
It
has to be
lost its
some sort of
luster.
situation. Right,
Loses its luster.
right.
But especially with that, you're always up here.
Hmm.
Where's that come down?
Yeah,
And that's why you see the irritability, you see the lashing out, you see the
yeah,
depression, you see all that stuff. Where, as responders, how do you separate that? And, like I said, for me, what we do here, my wife and I do it together. We talk to other people that have similar stories or situations that they've been through. So it's almost
yeah,
like a free therapy session for
yeah,
us.
yeah.
And it's
Honestly.
fantastic.
Right,
It
and it's
just
good for the people
helps.
that are sharing their story. So
And
it
that's what I
helps. It's
mean.
all around helps everybody.
And that's why I try to sit here and not I try to shut up because I want to give you the floor, you know what I mean? And it's hard. Like I've never been a interviewer of any type, so we're
I
trying
think
to
you're a
develop that
natural.
as we go. We're
Yeah,
trying. I
yeah,
appreciate it, man, for real. So, Court, you're still early in your career,
I am.
but you've already seen how mental health can impact first responders. What's one thing you wish more people understood about our job as dispatchers?
When I had when I started the class, when you get put in a class like that, it's not one specific age group, it's not one specific ethnicity, it's people from all over and
Oh
all
yeah.
different ages.
Oh yeah.
I had a girl in my class that literally just graduated high school. And I'm sitting there and I've had a couple of years. I've been involved in emergency services for a couple of years. So I have a pretty decent, I would say, look at what goes on because I've been
Sure.
on a couple cardiac arrests that have been fatal. I've seen some things that, probably no normal 20-year-old sees just in their average life. But
Mm.
I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Not a clue. I think that it's great. I think that it's great that we have people that want to be in the career and, thrive to be in the career. I think it's great. But I really think I often think that a lot of people that end up in emergency services don't have a good mental health to begin with.
You hit that right on the head, man.
They
Hit it right on
don't.
the head.
They don't because I know I didn't. I didn't at all. Actually, I was at the very, very end of my path when I started. So, I just wish that, if I were to say one thing to somebody, it's hard because there's a lot of things when it comes to emergency services that you have to be able to understand that this is what's going to come with the job. Emergency services, especially us as dispatchers and call taking, especially, this is not something where you run into a bad situation and you hang up the phone and it's over. Because as soon as the phone starts ringing again and that call drops, it's never ending until your shift is over. And sometimes not even then because you get mandated for another 8 hours. So I really just, especially the younger people that come into this career that have no background in emergency services whatsoever, I really hope that, my advice to them would be like, please, even if you don't think you need it, please go reach out to a therapist. Even if you just don't think you need it and you just sit there and talk to somebody, because I promise you, at some point in your life, especially call taking, it's going to happen to you. It's happened to me already where I'm like, wow, is this where I'm supposed to be? Because this is rough. I
Yep.
really, my advice to somebody that's new, that's freshly coming into it, please get a therapist. Like, even if it's not a therapist, please confide in somebody that you can talk to and you trust, because you're going to need it. You are going to need it.
My hardest transition, because I did have the experience, I had the, on the truck experience for nearly 12 years, was separating from that to do
Yeah.
dispatch.
Yeah.
I honestly think in some ways, I don't know if this is going to be a popular opinion or not, but some ways dispatching is harder than actually being out on the street. Because for me, I had to shut off my pre-hospital provider
Yep.
brain and be like, okay, I have to read my protocols. And
I get it.
I understand the liability there. That's why we have the protocols. There's a
And it's great.
liability. It is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, shutting off this brain,
Oh, yeah.
my
Shut off.
responder brain,
Yeah. Yeah.
Jimmy
Shut
told me
off.
that. He told me that because our class was a mix of, there was some people with either military or, public safety experience, and the rest were more food service industry people, and they do very well because it's almost like a customer service thing, and you're talking to people like taking orders. But it was very challenging. It's still to this day is challenging because on the other side of things, your medical director and your protocols on the other side of things, this is what we do, and I know what we're doing.
You know when you get a seizure patient and they're saying, "Oh my gosh, they are snoring. They are not agonal." That's what comes
Yeah,
with
they're
the
having a
seizure.
seizure.
That's what it is. That's how they breathe. And it's like, no, Cort, you cannot. You shut
Yeah.
it off. You know
Yeah,
what I
and
mean? Yeah.
it's so hard.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
still a challenge at this. I'm coming up on 6 years now. Coming up on 6 years in April working 911. But so with that, dude, if someone here is listening and struggling with their own mental health, but's afraid to ask for help, what would you say to them?
Like I said, I talked about some stuff that I went through, and it's never. I really want people, especially the people that are around my age, because like I said, I feel like we're definitely breaking the stigma. We are, for sure.
Oh
We
yeah.
are. But I feel like the hardest crowd that's going to need some work with breaking is the younger people, because my brain isn't even fully developed yet. I'm not 21, I'm going to be 21 in May. My brain is still not fully developed. They don't understand. My advice to anybody that is out there that is struggling with any sort of mental health, whether you think it's the smallest or the biggest thing, it is never too late to get help. You may think that it's too late, because trust me, I've been there. I have been there. I have been there. I when I was in high school, I had everything planned out. I was done. I didn't know what to do with my life. I didn't know what to do with my life. I was graduating high school. I felt that I was a nobody. I had no plan as to what I was going to do after high school. Everybody looked at me like I was crazy because I wasn't going to college. I didn't want to go to college. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life, and I was so lost. Something clicked. Something. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was, talking to my now wife, or thinking back and realizing what type of situation Dana was in when she lost Evan, and the thought of my mom or my dad or anybody that I've had an impact on having to go through that similar situation. I don't know if it was that clicked or what clicked, but it's never to you could be at the very end of it. You could be planned out, and you're going to do it, or whatever the situation may be, and it comes to you last minute and being like, oh shit, like I need help. It's never too late, and it doesn't matter how old you are. It does not, because I feel like it's even worse now. It's even younger people that are going through it. I look at the statistics like every day. Especially like there's a bunch of different things out there. It's like as far as the choking challenge goes, or the suicide rate, and you know gun inflicted wounds for suicide. The rates have been rapidly increasing,
Yeah.
and it's even more so in the younger people than it is the people that are older.
I think a
Because
lot of it has to do with the bullying aspect
yeah,
of it
it
too,
is.
and the
It is.
social
It's
media like we
social
were
media.
discussing. Yeah.
Social media is great. Social media can be a great thing, but it also can be a terrible thing.
Oh
My
yeah.
sister is graduating high school this year, which is like crazy to think about. Crazy to think about. But
Makes you feel old.
yeah, a little bit. A little bit. My sister was talking to me the other day, and she's like, My sister is so smart. She's so intelligent, and I have never been like book smart. It's never been like that. My
Me
sister,
neither, man.
my sister is so smart, and she's graduating, and she has struggled. She struggled so much through school because she just gets bullied all the time. She can't even go to school. She hasn't gone to school in probably 3 years. She's strictly online. She can't do it.
Oh
She
wow.
walks into she gets close to the building and she'll have a panic attack. She can't do it. And I think that's terrible because, my grandma, my nana, she was like basically my mom when I was growing up. And it was a very different time back then. You would maybe, yeah, I'm sure there was bullying that went on. I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But
There's
it
all
didn't
kinds of bullying
follow
when I was a
you.
kid.
Right. It didn't follow you when you went home because there was no social media. There was no
Mm-mm.
Facebook or Snapchat or whatever it is. You had the old twisted dial phones. Like my first
Oh
my
yeah.
first my first phone was a little square and it took me like 15 minutes to text somebody because I was pressing the buttons because my parents were old school. Like, it didn't follow them home before. Now it follows you home and you're everything. You have like a magnifying glass on you at all times. All these
Yeah.
kids and nobody knows how to communicate anymore either because it's all over the phone
You
or
can't
behind
sit
a
down and have a
screen.
conversation. You
No,
can't have a
no,
conversation anymore.
no. And it's like what happened to that? But yeah, the bullying is what really and people, it's very cliche to say and it's like they put this big thing in school and it's like you see something, say something and whatever. Nobody coming from somebody that was just in high school not too long ago, nobody pays attention to that shit. In fact, and nobody takes it seriously. They think it's a
Yeah.
joke and it's funny. It's all fun and games until you find out one of your best friends just committed suicide because he was being bullied. Like that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, it's never I hate that. And even like my pat was in Vietnam and he just got diagnosed with he's 80 years old and he just got diagnosed with PTSD not too long ago. 80 years old.
No.
80 years it took to to get diagnosed with that. He was in Vietnam. Now
Yeah.
you know how many years ago that was?
Yeah.
And he's
Older than
just
me.
now. Yeah, right, way before my time. He's just now figuring it out. And it's like, if we could even make the smallest impact, like you say all the time, if it reaches that one person, that's it. I've done my job. I have done
Yeah.
my job and my advice or story has reached somebody. There is hope. I'm young. I'm still very young. I have a lot of life to live. And it's crazy to think that I thought my life was supposed to end a couple you know, years back when I was in middle school, high school. It's a crazy thing because I've experienced so much. I've gotten certifications. I've advanced in my career. I've met people. I got married. Like none of that would have happened if I decided that it was my time to go, and it
Yeah.
wasn't. So if you could just get help and realize that there is, as cliche as it is, there is somewhat of a light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to make it there. But you also have to be willing. Therapy is, like I said, I've been in therapy since fourth grade, and you have to be willing to do it.
Put that work in. Put
You
that
have
work
to,
in for sure.
like I said, fourth grade, from fourth grade until now, that's a lot of years to put into therapy. You have to be willing to trust somebody else to give you what they feel is the best advice to help you.
See, and that's why I feel that you're so well adjusted. You're a well adjusted dude. Like,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that. I'm gonna bring up age, someone of your age to
hmm
be open enough and mature enough to understand that it's okay to come on a show, spill my guts out to everyone,
Yeah.
let everyone know my story.
Yeah.
And this is gonna change some minds,
Yeah.
because
I hope it does. I'm
it's gonna
very
change some
hopeful that it
minds.
does because, like I said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how old you are. Um, the mental health crisis is a huge at a rapid increase rate no matter
Oh
how
yeah.
old you are. But I think it's even more important and I talked to my wife about this because I was like at first, I reached out to you and I was over the moon and I was like, I don't know how people are gonna like think of me because I'm so young and they're gonna be like, what the hell does he know about this? And
There you go.
and I said to my
There
wife,
you
I said,
go.
you know what? But this is the point. This is the overall picture though, Bart, because I'm 20 years old. You have done your time in emergency services. There's going to come a time where you're going to retire and I'm still going to be just excelling in my career. If we
Yeah.
don't nick this in the butt now, it's never going to happen. And why not start with the upcoming generation of providers?
Foster that. Foster
If
those
we
people.
could stop it now, it may not be as big as a problem in 5 to 10 years. It's still always going to be there, but it may not be as big and prominent as it is now.
But
You
look how
know,
open it is. It's starting to become now.
right?
That's the thing. Let's open up this conversation, the dialogue with everything. See,
Absolutely.
and I think another recurring thing that we've heard is so we have people go to EMT class, go to paramedic class that have never, or whether they're involved in emergency services or not. You have them come in, and first thing that should be in that Nancy Caroline book, and I'm sure you know that book well, is okay. This is what to expect when you're expecting. You know that you ever heard that
Yes.
thing? What
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
expect when you
When
don't
expecting.
expect it. This is what it's going to be, and this is what's going to come. So this is how we need to deal with it. And I think there should definitely be recurring training and stuff when it comes to mental
Yeah.
health. It
Mandatory
has to be,
debriefings.
and not necessarily just the debriefings, but you have to better prepare people for things. Really, yep, you're going to see
Yep. Dead
people
people.
that hang themselves, people
Yeah.
that blew off their heads.
Yeah.
Or if the 911 side of it, you're going to hear people that do it over the phone.
Yeah. And you're
So,
never going to know what happened.
and that's the kicker. That's why 911 is so hard because you don't
It's
get the outcomes. You don't get to see the outcomes.
right.
And you
It's
know,
completely different from an emergency responder side of it because
it
like
is.
you've been in it, I'm still in it, I'm still in it. Like that
Yeah.
it's a lot more than just picking up the phone and being like, okay, well, I hope help started on the way because coming from someone that has a background in emergency services, it's like it lingers with you because, like I said, that night that I was on like a bender of just horrible calls after one after another, and that first overtime shift that I picked up, first time the phone dropped, it was an older woman and her son hung himself, and I, God helps out and everything, but it stuck with me because you don't see it. I don't know what position he was in. What did he look like? She's
Yeah.
saying that he's beyond help. Do you know that for sure? Because I can't see it. He may not
Yeah.
be beyond help, but that's what you're telling me. I'm not there to see it. I don't know what the severity of the situation is, and that's a huge adjustment for somebody that
Hmm.
comes from being a first responder. Like I said, I volunteer my time after work to respond to the emergencies that we're putting out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's huge, and it is a struggle. It is a struggle, but it's not something that can't be overcame. It's just something that you have to work on, like anything else.
You just have to, but we need to break it down. Those are the type
Yeah,
of calls you need to break down and what, you have to figure out what necessarily, it wasn't the call as a whole. There was particular things that you already
something. Yeah,
noticed in
yeah,
that call
yeah.
that really bother you. So I think that's where the conversation needs to begin. We
Hmm.
need to have people, the peer support groups, which, we're all working on. We're like,
Yeah,
I've been in talks with a bunch of good people that we're trying. I'm trying to push something. I want to push something out, specifically for where we work. So it's a start. You know what I mean? This is also a start.
yeah.
This
You
is a
got to
nice
start somewhere.
platform. And hopefully, you coming on today, it helped you in some sort of way. And I honestly think this is going to have a lot of reach because it's going to speak to a lot of the younger generation of people who be like,
Yeah,
no shit.
yeah,
And to a lot of the older generation, be like, wow, okay, maybe I need to scale back my preconceived notions of this person and be like, wow, they do have a lot to offer here,
yeah.
you know? So, Court, we're going to start wrapping it up here, but I have one more pretty good question for you, and I
Okay.
want you to sort of marinate for a second on it. So, looking back, if you could give advice to your younger self, what would that be?
Boy, I've always been the type of person that's very hard on myself. Very hard on myself, no matter what it is, no matter what, career I was in or, what I was involved in. I've always been so hard on myself, and I feel like that is a big aspect of sometimes why I get myself in the situations I do, like with overthinking things and stuff like that. I think my big advice to myself would be, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs in the road with this, and you just need to be patient and not be so hard on yourself, because I am the worst person to myself, I am the
Hmm.
hardest person that I am. myself. That's who the enemy is all the time, is yourself. You
Oh
are the
yeah.
one that is so hard on yourself. It's not other people, you know? So I think that would be my biggest advice, you know, just don't be so hard on yourself. You know, you're going to go through some crazy shit. Everybody's going to go through some crazy shit, whether it be personal or career-wise, whatever it may be. But don't be so hard on yourself. It happens to everybody. And don't be so hard on yourself to, you know, overthink. Maybe I should talk about this, because if it's a thought, you probably should talk about it.
There you should talk.
You know, you probably should talk about it. Yeah. I think that would be my biggest advice. Don't be so hard on yourself, and just, you know, just ride the wave, because it's a process. It is a process. Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, Cort Gordon, my
Yeah.
man, dude, I really appreciate you again for reaching out. And how dare you think I was never going to ask you to be on?
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, Bart, I really hope this you know, opens a new eye, especially for the younger generation, because, you know, no matter how old you are, but especially the younger generation, this isn't something that should be overlooked, you know.
I think that's
And I
one of
appreciate
the key.
you opening this platform too, for not only myself but for other people, because this, you know, you have no idea, this could be helping people in ways that you wouldn't even imagine, you know.
That's what
So
we hope,
I
man.
appreciate
Even
that.
if people don't like talk about it or say anything, that the whole thing is to get this out in the world for hopefully some people listen to it. And I think
Yeah.
we've had a pretty overwhelming outreach from people. So, you know, when we were taking the class for one of our new programs at work, that instructor reached out to me
Oh
via
my gosh.
Instagram.
That is so crazy, because I said to my wife, I was like, I wanted to go. We were talking about podcasts and everything. It literally just like slipped my mind, and I was like, man, like I need to go back there and tell him, like, Bart has a podcast. This is like, you want to watch something. This is something that you should watch. And the class had already started, and I was like, damn, like, and I didn't even get his email or anything. So that's crazy that you said that.
He
And he was such
reached
a
out.
cool dude.
Super cool.
Yeah.
But dude, he reached out and he's like, Mr. Heaney. I'm like, one, don't call me Mr. Heaney.
Call me Bart.
That's right. And he's like, would you mind if I, you know, in the process of giving class, I'm not going to mention any, you know, I don't want to mention that. But in the class, if I can mention your podcast to my students, I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Please do. But a dispatcher, and a CISM peer support person from North Carolina is going to be on the show.
That's crazy.
So she reached out, and she works at a PSAP down in North Carolina.
Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
We're going to have her on here too.
I know he had some crazy stories to tell too. Like he
yeah.
was really involved in it, and he has seen
SWAT
like
team
a
stuff
lot
and
of
everything.
people. Yeah, he's been in contact with some like pretty crazy people, like big like mass casualty stuff. So that's crazy that you can reach that audience in North Carolina.
That's the hope.
We're in Pennsylvania,
PA, buddy.
Yeah, like what, North Carolina. That's nuts.
Heck yeah. Super excited about it, you know, and
Yeah.
I think my wife and I, you know, I'll just refresh if you don't know, we were just chilling in bed one night, just talking, and I'm like, babe, I want to start a podcast. And she looked at me kind of funny. She's like, okay, here's one of Bart's another weird idea other than selling Pokemon cards. And dude, look, this is, you know, it might be my mental health issues, but I think when I do something, I do it. You know, I'm like, okay, we're doing it. So here's the podcast, and we're going full tilt into it, and we're just gonna do it.
Yeah, well, it's a positive thing to be all straightforward into it. Yeah, it's a good thing. You know, like me and my wife on one of my past days, like we have a day where we sit down and we watch. We got to get back into the swing of it because it's been crazy with work. But we sit down and we watch a podcast together. And like I said, she don't have anything in emergency services. It's just something that we sit down and we watch, and you know, it creates an open dialogue for a conversation if there's one that needs to be had. You know, I think it's a great thing.
Glad that you guys are enjoying it. It's always good to hear some feedback, especially from a guest that comes on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if anyone would like Cort would be interested on coming on the show, hit us up at our email. It's twwcpodcast@proton.me. It's a fully secure server. Even Proton, that they can't scan your emails. Google can, just so you people are aware. So that's a plug for Proton. Give me a sponsorship, damn it.
Come on now.
But Proton Mail, it's very good. You know, like you guys send your, you know, your sign up forms and pictures. It's encrypted and everything. Mailing servers can't even look into it. They have no clue what this is. So. But other than that, guys, if you want to be on the show, hit us up there. Cort, dude, thank you for being so open and transparent about your upbringing and your life with us. Thank you for sharing it. Like I said, I think this is going to be very impactful for everyone, not just the younger generation. I think for everyone to see where you're coming from and be like, everyone has a story, man. Everyone has a story.
Right.
Everyone has a background. And that's the weight you carried. Yeah, how cliche was that? The weight you carried. Cort, brother, thank you again. Stick around. We'll finish this up. We love you guys. Thank you. Keep on watching. Hit us up on YouTube and all the social platforms. We're all over the place. And make sure you subscribe. All right, guys. Peace out. We'll see you later. Cort, thank you, brother.
Thank you.
All right, guys. See ya.